This is a platypus. A platypus with boobs. Does this do anything for anyone? I have a pretty wide strike zone, but even I'm tilting my head at this one. It has to do something for someone though, probably. Hi, I'm Wes the Explosion, and this is the Backlog. So, I played Ty the Tasmanian Tiger HD on the Nintendo Switch. It's a 3D platformer collectathon where you play as the titular Ty. The antagonist is an evil emu named Boss Cass, who is upset that mammals rule the world instead of the descendants of the dinosaurs, like him and his lizard henchmen, which kinda confuses me. Are we going based on the old theory that dinosaurs were lizards, or the current one that they became birds? Or are all non-mammal things the same? Am I nitpicking this too much? Anyway, he also has a few mammal henchmen, so I am still confused. So he needs 5 talisman to take over the world. Ty's mom and dad fight him off, get thrown into some limbo dimension when doing so, and manage to scatter the talisman before Cass can grab them, and then it becomes Ty's problem to get them back together. To do this, he must run around, throwing his boomerangs to collect thunder eggs, to power some koala's machine to locate the talisman and send Ty to them. Ty can run, jump, swim, bite, and, most importantly, boomerangs, as I said before. There's a hub world sanctioned off into parts. Each part has 3 levels you can warp into, and then finally a boss when you collect enough eggs. Each level has 8 eggs to collect, one of them being the main objective, one being a race once you complete that, one you get for collecting 300 of these weird radioactive sticker looking things, one for freeing those weird, goofy little booger guys, and then the other 4 are from side objectives. You can kinda navigate these through the pause menu, which will give you a list of which eggs you need to collect, and you can also view a map, which will give vague locations for where you can find the eggs. Now on to the boomerangs. You have 2 you can throw at once, and there are various types you can get. You start off with a basic set, of course, but after each boss you get a new elemental one, and by collecting enough gears, you can get optional special ones, such as one that flies faster and further, and one that lets you throw up to 8 out at once. As for how the game plays, it's pretty standard for a 3D platformer from years ago, even with it being upgraded to HD. It can be a little awkward at times, as it is in most games of the genre, you sometimes making jumps, sometimes being close so you have to grab the edge and pull yourself up, and then other times just missing altogether, oftentimes it being indistinguishable when you made it one time but not the other what you did different. I mean, that is pretty standard though for 3D platformers, not knowing exactly where you are, since it can be kinda hard to convey on a television screen. The boomerangs can also be inconsistent, sometimes you just throwing them out and them seeming to psychically home in on an enemy, and others, you standing still, looking dead on at a target, and it missing multiple times, either flying completely over it or somehow around it. The swimming is oddly good though. Maybe I am just used to these sort of games so that I don't mind the mechanics in these as much as most people do. As for the characters, which maybe I should have talked more about right after the story part, they are mostly forgettable. Ty has the closest thing to a personality in the game, him showing enthusiasm and throwing out Australian slang when something good happens, and being friendly and offering to help when he interacts with other characters. There's Mori, a bird with a paunch, who forced me to listen to tutorial dialogue for actions that anyone who's ever played a video game before could have figured out by pushing buttons. Boss Cass isn't bad, though kinda generic as a villain. Sly is just slightly bad guy Ty. And most of the other characters are so one note that they're not worth mentioning, to the point where I don't even remember most of their names. One of the weirder character interactions was one of the bosses, where it was a lizard in a mech. When they first showed themselves during the beginning of the 3rd phase, they were silent, and I found myself wondering if they had pecs or breasts. Then when I won, things got weird when she did indeed have a female voice, said some slightly flirty things, and then left after Ty seemed to get a bit bashful. It left me very confused. I had never seen this character before, but they threw her out like she was an established femme fatale, which brings up another question. Is this supposed to be sexy? She's a scaly with odd proportions, somewhere between normal person and SD or chibi. It seems a little too specific to appeal to most, but boobs are sexy, and they did give her those, so maybe they did mean for her to be sexy. And then later, there was a bat boss with lady legs and a well-defined chest, but a gross bat head. Is this meant to be sexy? Who is this for? Is this a furry thing? When I got to the credits, there were specific profile pics for some Kickstarter backers with custom characters drawn in the style of the game, which may have been a really specific type of fursona. The way the characters look in general remind me of a generic store brand Sonic type of character, so it might be like how everyone has a Sonic OC and Rule 34 is full of pretty gnarly stuff. And don't get me wrong, while this might be too much information, while I don't consider myself a furry, I am open to furry stuff, so I'm not hating on this. The weird diminutive proportions are where things get weird for me, but to each their own. Anyway, this brings me back to my overall thoughts on the game, which I can't really recommend. It feels more like a checklist of things included in a 3D collectathon as opposed to its own unique thing. Main character mascot? Check. Recurring character that explains things and acts as a guide? Check. Multiple types of collectibles serving different purposes? Check. Bad guy? Check. Girl character that serves as love interest? Check. Evil version of main character that is also kind of an ally eventually? Check. Hub world with several smaller levels you warp into? Check. Several of these things could apply to just about every kind of video game, but that's just how bare bones this feels. The most unique thing about it is the boomerangs, but I mean, it's not the only 3D mascot platformer with ranged attacks, so this feels like a bit of a stretch. I was constantly reminded the whole game of Banjo-Kazooie and Sonic the Hedgehog. The collectible elements reminding me of the former, the character designs feeling like a watered-down version of the latter, and while this game isn't bad, both of those series have much better titles, so I kept on thinking that I'd rather be playing one of them instead. Once the excitement of starting a new game wore off, about a level and a half in, I just found myself really bored and the game became a slog. I consider this game neither good or bad, and as weird as it is to say, I'd almost rather have played a bad game instead of this. With a bad game, I can talk about the flaws and either laugh at it or get genuinely upset, which, while negative, contains more passion than boredom. As much as I ripped into Poison Control last week, it was much more memorable than this. It had a strong style and visuals, some of the music was pretty catchy, and the subplots could be interesting. And there was a good bit of jank to make fun of. Even Ty's ending was dull, you just being told that you did it and then his parents returning as an afterthought. Imagine a Mario game where at the end a Toad just tells you good job and then Peach walks in and says, "I'm here too." While not all of them are showstoppers, they're typically not that basic. "Hey Ty, you got the things! Way to go! Gee thanks, I'm so enthralled." Now all that said, this is the first game out of 4, and normally a series gets better after the initial title as the team behind it learn more about how to make games and they figure out what does and doesn't work, so I would be open to try one of the other titles down the line. I probably won't go out of my way to pick it up, but if the right motivation comes along, like a really cheap price point or a glowing review, I might come back to it. No immediate plans though. And then they announced the last Smash Fighter. When the presentation started, I got a bit emotional thinking this would be the last one. Then the actual person appeared and I lost interest. Then I got kind of emotional again near the end hearing Sakurai talk. So yeah, Sora from Kingdom Hearts. I had 5 things I didn't want to see in Smash, the first being any character that's not primarily a video game character because that opens the floodgates up a bit too much. Then, no Ubisoft characters because of all the reasons they were in the news the past year, and all we did get was a Rabbit and Altair costume, so that was mostly avoided. Then no Activision Blizzard character for the same reason, but kicked up a notch. And specifically, no Travis Touchdown because he's pretty much a dick joke wrapped up in a horrible person. And finally, no Sora because Disney is, appropriately, cartoonishly evil, and I want them as far away from Nintendo as possible. While I don't think Nintendo would ever sell the company, I would have thought the same of Marvel and Star Wars, so I don't really want the voracious Lovecraftian horror that is Disney getting any weird ideas. And I guess I got close enough to what I wanted, given that it seems the only uniquely Disney reference that is getting put in is the dingle-dangle on the end of Sora's Keyblade, and really, they're just 3 circles overlaid on each other. They could be Oreos. Or tiny manhole covers. You don't know. So yeah, if they were gonna put him in, they did it in a way that avoids my greatest fears. I do kinda worry about him being like Bayonetta in Smash 4, where she was super overpowered, wrecked the meta, and just made it super unfun for anyone playing the game even slightly seriously, cause while I didn't get super into 4, I do really love Ultimate, so I don't want to see the game become stale due to one character. I mean, he's got 2 recovery moves that can be linked together, what look like easy air combos, spamming projectiles, and a counter. Then again, Sakurai did struggle a bit in his demo match. Then again, he lost when he demoed Kazuya, and his level 9 CPU now is so infamous it became a meme for a second. And Kazuya is still kinda considered high up in the tier list, I think. Of course, all that said, I don't think I'm good enough at the game to predict these things, so maybe I should just shut up and wait to see. While I'm not too upset with him being included, since my main fears were assuaged, I do still have some major issues with this, and that is, as should surprise no one, with the fans. If we can call them that. Gamer entitlement strikes again, with some online giving us another round of complaints because they think that because they didn't want Sora in the game, no one must have. This happens every time, so it's no big surprise, it just bugs me. When they put out Fighter Pass number 2 for purchase, we were entitled to 6 more characters by the end of 2021, not 6 characters that were on our personal wish list. They could have put out frickin' Where's Waldo and it would not have been false advertising. Even more egregious, though, were those complaining that Sora wasn't put in sooner. In the presentation, Sakurai mentioned that back in Smash 4, when they did the ballot, the top request was for Sora. Some latched onto this and said that him and Nintendo lied when they said that Bayonetta was top to justify a rigged poll. This is bull, because while my memory isn't always sterling, I specifically remember Sakurai saying that Bayonetta was the top feasible choice from the ballot. At the time, I just figured that meant that the top 3 were Shrek, Goku, and SpongeBob, in that order. Sakurai also said that they didn't announce the poll results because they didn't want to cause trouble for anyone, so this wasn't done as a big cover-up, but to prevent dickheads like you from harassing Square Enix's Twitter and email to let them put Sora in. And by you, I don't necessarily mean you watching this now, but if it is you, I hope you realize it. Some also claim that it should have been easy to get Sora in since they got Cloud, Hero, and Sephiroth in, but Sora has a Disney component attached to him, so getting permission to include him had to be a Herculean task. I shudder to imagine it. While Nintendo does occasionally make decisions that bother me, especially as of late, Sakurai and his team have so obviously put so much love and care into this game, from getting the licensing rights, to the game balance, to the added content, to just all the references, that it really irks me to see them get harassed by a bunch of entitled brats. I know, or at least really hope, that it's just a vocal minority making these complaints, but when they're so damn loud, it's hard to ignore, so I let it bother me more than it should. I'll talk more on Sora once he drops, and I might even do a gameplay video going through his classic mode, spirit board, and possibly even his 100-man smash, but for now, I'd just like to end on thank you, Sakurai, and thanks to the rest of the team at Sora Limited. You did such an amazing job on this game that I don't think I can get too excited about whatever entry comes next, since it will likely pale by comparison. And finally, Metroid Dread came out, and I'm pissed as hell, because I asked for the 8th off and I didn't get it. Of course, I understood when I asked that I might not be able to if it wasn't feasible, but the person I asked took a long weekend themselves, after doing the same thing like 2 weeks ago. I don't remember my last long weekend, and all I wanted was 1 day, to play Dread. So now, here I am, an hour and a half in, getting set to go into work, and all I want to do is fuck off and play this instead. but I don't want to screw over the guy who I need to take over for, that had no control over me not being able to play Dread today. I'm resisting the urge to start it up again, because if I do, I know I won't be able to stop myself in time again. So here you get this rant, which I really hope no one from work will see due to it being not only awkward, but could possibly also lead to some problems. Don't tell anybody. Anyway, Metroid Dread is sexy as hell. I'm looking at it and it is perhaps the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, especially the cutscenes. It starts off with a brief explanation of what a Metroid is, then a quick summation of Metroid Fusion before we're told that the super nasty Parasite X was seen on a nearby planet. Some research robots, the Emmy, were sent to investigate but have gone dark. Due to Samus's experience with the X, she's sent to investigate by the Federation, despite them being kind of on the outs with each other. Haven't we destroyed their super expensive bioweapons program like twice, at least by now? Is this a trap, or is this mission can't say that word on YouTube, a Not Alive mission, the type that those guys from that one DC movie, the Not Alive Squad, would take on? Maybe the Federation figures that the mission will have a low survivability rate, and so they figure they'll give that gal they hate first crack at it. Anyway, after being told by your computer that this is stupid and you shouldn't do it, you go down to the planet anyway, encounter that Chozo guy from the one trailer, watch the cutscene from said trailer, and then, about 5 minutes in, you get to play. You start off with your blaster arm, though without a charge, a small missile capacity, melee counter, and a slide, so pretty bare bones, and you set out to explore. There are 7 Emmy on planet, along with at least one Chozo guy, possibly the X-Parasite, and whatever native fauna there is to contend with. I may or may not have already encountered 2 of the Emmy, and feeling pretty tense expecting to find more. I normally don't do stealth gameplay too well, but whether my playstyle or intentional, I've been dealing with the Emmy more by keeping moving and outmaneuvering them. They are one-hit kills if they catch you, unless you manage to get the small window to counter them, which I did only once, when the game paused the action to teach it to me, which I don't think really counts. These encounters really change up the pacing in the game, since in normal areas, I'm taking my time and carefully looking for either the way forward or secrets, but when an Emmy enters the equation, I'm running around like a loon, panicking and sometimes circling paths again and again until I can find out how to escape. I really want to complete this game without looking up a walkthrough or getting hints, and I'm managing fine so far. I've gotten stuck a few times, once not realizing how certain paths connected, another time not noticing the slightly glowing panel that I needed to stand on to activate something, but after some trial and error, I pieced it together, so far so good. Only the Emmy have managed to kill me, though I'm sure other enemies and bosses will ramp up as I go along, but I should be fine. So yeah, I'm having a great time, there's a fair chance it'll get a strong recommendation, so hopefully after work tomorrow I can get around to devoting my entire life, at least the near future of it, towards getting through this game and figuring out what the heck is going on this planet. I really want my Morph Ball. Also curious if Ridley will be there. They did do a reprint of his amiibo after all. That's that. I plan on finishing Metroid Dread by next week, so I'll give my full thoughts then. If I finish it in the next few days, I might actually put out an episode early, just so that it still has relevance when I get it up, but we'll see if I manage that. The week after that should be Sora, but for now, we have Tai. So thanks for watching, maybe subscribe if you enjoy this sort of thing, and perhaps I'll see you in the next episode.